Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. We are broadcasting live on the Global Beer Brewery Tour webinar. If someone can reach out and just make sure they can hear us all right, a little confirmation, that would be awesome. And then we'll get started here. All right. Glenn, Art Director, Global Beer Network, with the instant reply that we are live and rolling. Awesome. Guys, welcome to the Global Beer Brewery Tour, the second episode here. We've got a really special show lined up. Of course, just to reiterate why we're doing this in these uncertain times, you know, we're trying to do everything we can for our customers at wholesale and retail to provide added value to our brands. Really excited to see wholesalers here today, also retailers that are using this content to leverage their import programs and reach out to consumers to get them to learn more about these brands. One thing about Global Beer Network, we're really excited about the brands. We're very passionate about these brands, but we do know that they require at times an extra hand sell. They're not familiar to everyone all the time. So this is, in some ways, although a weird situation to be put in, that this is our way of interacting with consumers, is also really exciting to have such a captive audience and give you more than just a 3-minute sales pitch, but actually be able to speak to the producers, the brewers, the people behind these brands, which really get us to wake up in the morning. And once we pour our original Schneider Weisse here, a few slides in, we'll make a special toast to the retailers on and off premise who are doing everything they can for their businesses. But until then, until we have liquid in the glass, we will not be saying Prost yet. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you guys Susanne Hecht and Hans-Peter Drexler from Schneider Weisse. Guys, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. They are live. We had their IT guys working today to make sure they could be set up via satellite in Kelheim, Germany. They have left their situations in home offices to be at the brewery to provide an authentic experience, and we're so happy and excited that you guys are here, and we really appreciate the support in doing this with us. So a moment to introduce Hans-Peter. Obviously, this is someone who has had a great career, not only brewing beer in Germany, but he's made a substantial impact on the craft beer scene here in America. Multiple World Gold Cup wins for 2 of the beers that we're going to really focus on today, with Aventinus Weiss and Doppelbock and original Schneider Weisse. Obviously, he's also brewed the Hopfenweiss with Garrett Oliver, Brooklyn Brewery, who you see, and done collaborations with Brewdog. So he's a top dog in the brewing world when it comes to people who have really put their imprint on it. So Hans-Peter, thank you for your time. I'm sure you're busy, so I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
So maybe you can get us started. What is wheat beer? What is Weiss beer, and what makes it different from some of the other things people are drinking as far as ales and pilsners and things like that?
Wheat beer is a very traditional beer style from Bavaria, the Bavarian wheat beer. We know in the brewing world, we know different wheat beers, of course. Bavarian wheat beer, Belgian wheat beer, American wheat beer. But if we talk about wheat beer, we talk about the Bavarian wheat beer, and we produce in this brewery, the Schneider Weisse, we produce only the traditional style wheat beer, top fermented with a little bit more than 50% wheat malt, and with a bottle conditioning system at the end of the production. So one of the characteristics is it has a very slow, very light hop aroma, and this, we use a little bit of Hallertau Hercules and Hallertau Tradition, the really classical Hallertau hop varieties. And we produce, of course, with a Reinheitsgebot from 1516. It's it's a Bavarian law, which the rule is only to use water, barley, and hops, and that's a little bit special in the wheat beer, because at that time almost 500 years ago, or a little bit more than 500 years ago, the wheat was not in this rule because it was very high value grain, and so the regulation was only to do at that time only to do it with barley, but they used wheat as well, and so it's a special thing in the
and obviously it's very particular to the region too, and I guess it's a good time to ask the question. Obviously, Schneider Weisse only brews Weiss beers. Has there ever been a point in, actually I have two questions. Has there ever been a point in the history of the brewery where other styles were brewed? Is that something that ever comes into consideration to leave this tradition of only Weiss beers, or is it pretty locked in, it'll never happen?
Yeah, it's part of the history of the Schneider Weisse, because Georg Schneider the first bought the right to brew wheat beer from the Bavarian kings, from the Bavarian dukes, and at that time the Bavarian right, it was a monopoly to brew wheat beer only by the Bavarian dukes, and in 1872 they sold this right because it was not a good business at that time, and the people preferred to drink more bottom fermented beers, lagers, and so the dukes sold the right, and Georg Schneider the first bought it, and he started his it was a startup, and I think he did a good job. So the brewery at the time grows very fast, and that was a foundation of the wheat beer tradition in this Schneider Weisse brewery.
Yeah, and maybe Susanne, you can give us a little bit of an explanation as to not only, and we'll touch on this a couple of times, but particularly the brewery is located in Kelheim, and we'll talk to that. But obviously 1607 dates the brew house that you're sitting in right now, but maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the significance of Duke Maximilian and just the relationship to Kelheim and wheat beer in that region.
Yeah, at that time, Kelheim, which is very centrally located, was really an important town. And there was this privilege of the Degenberg family, or Duke Maximilian later on, who inherited the right to brew wheat beer. And he decided to build a brewery in Kelheim, in this important town at that time. And this is the brewery where we are now. So the Schneider Brewery, where we are now, was the first wheat beer brewery of Bavaria, which is in Kelheim.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go to that slide real quick, just so we can see a shot of Kelheim. Obviously, when I came and visited just before the world flipped upside down from a transportation standpoint, and I got in right under the window, you described Kelheim humbly as just a simple village, but as you can see by these pictures, it's a pretty beautiful place at the confluence of two rivers, one being the Danube, and pretty significant spot and a beautiful place for a brewery, right? I mean, it's a nice place to live.
It's a nice place to live if you like the countryside. And for me, as I travel a lot normally, and I travel to big cities, it's always a place to go home, to relax. And we have many people who come by bicycles, who come by boat or whatever. So people who like nature enjoy this place a lot. And I enjoy living here, really. And from the top, it looks really beautiful. And we are right like on this little island that you can see downtown. This is where the brewery is. And in the sign in the middle, you can see Weisses Brauhaus, the wheat beer brewery, founded in 1607 in Kelheim. And then on the right, you see that yellow monument. It's the Hall of Liberation that was built by King Ludwig in remembrance of the Wars of Liberation against Napoleon. And it's just a monument, all marble inside. and yeah, tourist
It kind of,
attraction these
no
days.
matter where we were, wherever you are in town, because the village itself is obviously a lowland compared to where this monument is, it kind of looms over everything. You see it from almost every point that you're at. It kind of gives a stature to a very humble village, which I think is pretty charming, pretty cool. And obviously we'll talk about the relationship to Munich in a second. I want to get back to the top here, but it's really a unique brewery, a unique location, very peaceful. But I want to just go back to the top. We mentioned Georg Schneider 1 and 2, who got the rights to brew this wheat beer from the Kings, but which there are two people in the lineage of this brewery. Obviously today we are at Georg Schneider's 6th, and we'll see a picture with him at Aventinus Fest shortly. Each generation has imprinted his kind of own trademark on this brewery, recipes, the direction of the brewery. Obviously 2 world wars, a lot of things happened, but we're really going to talk about 2 people today because we're talking about 2 beers. So we're going to talk about 2 recipes and the 2 people who essentially oversaw them. And going back to your original explanation, Hans-Peter, about Georg 1, he was the founder of the original wheat beer recipe, and on the left-hand side of my screen is the original recipe in text, correct? That's the original recipe in the brew house, I believe.
Yeah, it's written in the book, in the original recipe book of George I, and we brew according to this recipe, of course, with a little bit of differences because raw materials were a little bit different 100 years ago, 150 years ago, of course, and but the basic things are the same as at that time.
Yep, and it's great. And we'll talk also, like I said, the lineage is very interesting, and I urge you all to visit Schneider Weisse on their website because it's an unbelievable resource of timeline of different things that happened in the brewery's history. But the next interesting one we'll see is Georg Schneider III passes away, and his wife Mathilde steps up covertly to run the brewery, as her son Georg IV was not old enough yet to run a brewery. So we meet Mathilde, and she obviously did a lot of work covertly. It was kind of unheard of to have a female brewer running a brewery in Germany, so she had to do it kind of pulling strings from behind the scenes, which is just really cool. But she's also inspired by the women's suffrage movement. World War I rationing is happening, so it's a pretty difficult time to run a brewery. Maybe you can tell us, Susanne, a little bit about Mathilde as a person.
Yeah, she had to be really strong, a strong woman, because at that time it was unusual for a woman to manage a company, and especially a brewery. And of course she had a brewmaster, but still the other breweries in Munich were watching closely what she was doing. And at that time, at the beginning of the 20th century, people liked strong beers, Bock beers a lot, and especially in Lent time, when people or the monks didn't eat, they had to have a rich beer to get food from. People liked those strong beers, and Mathilde Schneider said, well, I have a wheat beer brewery, so I want to have a wheat doppelbock. And so the Aventinus wheat doppelbock was created. That was the second beer that the Schneider family brewed. There was the original, and then there was the Aventinus. And she named this beer after the street in Munich where the bottling line was, Aventinstraße. And that street was named after the Bavarian historian to write about Bavarian history. And you see that guy in the label of the Aventinus. That's this man, this historian, Aventinus. But then the Munich breweries told her, you cannot name a doppelbock after a street, or it has to be named after a saint, or the name has to end in Arthur. You know, other strong beers, the names ending in Arthur.
Einger has Celebrator, Spaten has Optimator, so ATOR has to end in ATOR. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. But she was a smart woman, and she found, and there is this German name finden, which can mean to find and to invent. So we don't know really what happened, but she found Saint Aventinus, a saint who was buried on the Seven Hills in Rome. And that was the thing. So she could keep the name that she wanted to have for her beer.
So I love that. I love this woman. It's the German grandmother I think we all wish we had. Obviously strong-willed and probably a hell of a leader. But the fact that she thumbed her nose at, you know, was essentially a masculine brewing world who were just looking for a reason to knock her down. And she says, yeah, there's a St. Aventine. You know, yeah, go. He's over there. Go look at him. I'm gonna go brew an amazing wheat beer. I think that's such a cool story, and I hope that everybody on this webinar today takes that and shares that with their customers, because that is so neat. I mean, she's a wealth of good stories. At the end of the day, when we're selling these brands and talking about them, when you have a story and you have people behind them that are amazing, and then you drink the liquid, right? I hate to even use that term, but we've tasted some other Weiss and Doppelbocks alongside Aventinus. It's not even it seems like it's not even a question sometimes. It's just such a delicacy to it, light mouthfeel to it. It's fantastic. But we'll talk a little bit about it. I want to push onward. Maybe you can speak a little bit, because I think even for myself, you know, what is the relationship to Schneider Weisse to Munich in the Brauhaus? Because obviously at some point in history, the brewery was located in Munich and then you moved. So maybe you can explain a little bit about how you're still in part of the Munich beer scene, but also 2 hours north in Kelheim.
Yeah, the Brauhaus is the founder's house, where the brewery was founded at 1872, and now it's a big restaurant. It's like it's very close to the Hofbräuhaus, to the very famous Hofbräuhaus, only 5 minutes away. It's you see at the right side of the picture, it's a typical Bavarian, a typical Munich style. It's not a restaurant. We say Wirtschaft. It's not a pub. It's a Bavarian Munich style Wirtschaft. It's typical because it's a place where the people come there and they talk together. They sit together to the tables. They are not separate on the tables. They are together on the tables, and everybody can talk with everybody. So it's a very
social.
Pleasant. Yeah, very social, very pleasant, very nice. It's for breakfast. It's for dinner. It's for lunch. It's for every time.
I'm sure everyone in Germany, and I know the people on this call in the United States, are looking forward to getting back to that style of living. And I think hopefully some of these import European traditions of pubs and drinking beer kind of maybe see a resurgence in the United States, because obviously we've seen beer programs blow up into, you know, there's different programs. I have this one-off rare beer and there's different aesthetics, but I think that I can speak for Global Beer Network. The thing that we love about all the beers that we bring in, and it's important to the ones that succeed, is that there is this social component to it. There is a sitting down and having a few laughs, not taking it. We don't take ourselves seriously, but we take the beer seriously. And it's, you know, having been to the Weisses Brauhaus, it definitely has. There's a lot of laughter, people just hanging out, drinking original Schneider Weisse, not really sitting there contemplating every sip of the beer, but really the whole experience. So I think it's really unique, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about the relationship to Kelheim, so we don't necessarily have to go there. So we'll forge ahead. And these are some shots of the brewery and Kelheim for you guys. This is their outside beer garden in the back, very quaint. Pretty cool spot. I'm sure you guys are ready for the sun to shine and get back out there. And it looks like it's favorable conditions for social distancing. So I can't see why that wouldn't come back on board a little bit faster than your other concepts. I want to talk a little bit about the Hallertau region, because it seems like every time we talk about Kelheim, and you can say it's a humble place, but you are in the Hallertau region. That drive in, you are passing a lot of hop growing region. There obviously is the largest continuing hop growing region in the world, the Hallertau region. Can you speak a little bit, Hans Peter, about obviously the region, the hops that are growing there, but also how important it is for your brews to be located so close to your supply? It's pretty amazing.
For us, it's a very good option to have the hops have the hops in front of the door, because the Hallertau region is situated between Munich and Kelheim, and I have some contracts with the farmers here, so it's very easy for me to go to the farmers. It needs 20 minutes, half an hour to go there, talk with them, and to make some hop selections, to have the contacts to the hop breeders, and so we are very, very, very close to the hops farming, to the hops industry, and have all the newest ideas, the newest developments of this part of our raw material.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you spoke when I got to visit, but there's Hallertau and then Saphir, Hallertau this, Hallertau that. Anything grown in the region obviously has the names, but there's been attempts to grow and cultivate different types of hops. They haven't really been able to make Cascade work in the Hallertau region, correct?
The Cascade?
Yeah, it doesn't really work there, or are they growing in Hallertau?
It's for me personally, it's an interesting story, because I started 20 years ago. I started the first beer, the first German beer with it was the Weisse, and we brewed it with Cascade, with at the time with the US Cascade, and I tried to get it in the Hallertau, this hop variety, and I talked with different hop farmers and hop breeders to grow Cascade, and nobody knows what it really is, and nobody knows. I found one farmer. He told me, oh, he heard a little bit about the hops, this hop variety, and this. It's a very difficult hops with a lot of disease, and it's very hard to grow, and it's not interesting for them. But now, for now, I think it's about 6, 7, 8 years ago, they grow Hallertau Cascade, and I buy a little bit of Hallertau Cascade for a special beer style, and it works really good, and the farmers are happy about that, because it grows, it has very good efficiency or yield, and yeah, so times are changing. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, we always talk about the import impact on the American beer scene, but it's really interesting to see that it can go the other way as well, and not necessarily in breweries foregoing their DNA of the type of beers they brew, or what the ethos of what they're trying to do and put out in product lines, but the fact that the American consumer and their taste can somehow impact which ingredients you're cultivating, because it unlocks potential rather to brew beer under your kind of mentality or methodology is pretty awesome. I think that's a cool story.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the original Schneider Weisse, and someone asked the question, they'd like to hear about the yeast at the bottom of a bottle of Weiss beer and whether or not to drink it. And we'll get there in a second. But obviously, just to confirm, this is the original recipe dating back to 1872. Obviously, noticeable carbonated with the sort of banana and clove flavors, light mouthfeel, a little bit darker in color than some of your mass market Hefeweizens. But maybe this is the time we pour a beer, Hans-Peter and Susanne. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're ready. I have an American koozie to keep it cold.
Yeah.
I apologize in advance. I don't have a proper glass, but I have a wedding novelty glass that I was given. So go for it.
Sure.
Well, pros, guys, let's take a quick second just to thank you guys for continuing to brew great beer in these challenging times. Thank you to retailers, wholesalers that are still out there selling and and also working hard for their staffs. And of course, doctors, first responders. Suzanne's son is volunteering at hospitals to become one of those people. So cheers to him for doing that as well. So cheers, guys.
Cheers.
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 Oh, I've been waiting for that all day. That's good. So maybe we can take that moment to answer the question about re-fermentation, second fermentation in bottle can, but the importance in the flavor, but also the importance in serving it, whether you should put it in the glass when you serve it at a bar, or whether you let the consumer do it themselves.
I think it's one of the most important things for our beer style to have the bottle conditioning, the second fermentation in the bottle. We do the same. I think it's interesting to know we do the same in the keg. The same system. It comes from the same tank, from the same batch, and I say the secret of this bottle conditioning system is we have a very good formation of the flavor, because the original is very famous for the phenolic aroma, for the clove, for a little bit of nutmeg, and together with our special yeast strain, we have a special formation of this flavor.
So you're saying there's one yeast strain for the entire brewing process, or do you have multiple? So
it's the same yeast strain for the first and for the second. There's no difference. There's no difference.
Obviously, when we get to our Belgian brewers who have diverse range of beers from lager all the way up to quadruples and then bottle fermentation, we see some brewers that have up to 6 different yeast strains. So obviously, you should get your yeast to do as much as it does, from ranging from original Schneider Weisse to Aventinus, is pretty interesting, because that's a 4-degree jump in ABV as well. You're asking it to do a lot, which is
no, we do the traditional way. It's for the first few, it's very easy, because we put the yeast strain, the Schneider yeast. We have a special strain for us. It's always in this brewery. It's not available in everywhere. It's in this brewery for many years, and we put this yeast strain into the brew for the first fermentation, and then it needs about 5 to 6 days. After that time, the yeast, one part of this yeast comes up because it stopped fermenting, and the other part goes down to the bottom. And after that time, we separate the liquid from the yeast, only because most of them is settled down. And we have a little bit of this yeast in the liquid, and this rest of the yeast goes to the bottle, and so we get the second fermentation with the same yeast as the first fermentation. That's a very old system. It's very easy, very simple.
Wow. It should be noted, and it's on our website at globalbeer.com. Given these times of yeast packets being sold out of stores, I know I was doing sourdough bread making for a year before this, so I'd like to take credit for that. I'm not jumping on a trend, but it is very hard to buy yeast right now. And Georg Schneider posted how to extract yeast from a bottle of Schneider Weisse for the use in baking. And I told you that I tried to do it with 1 bottle because I was afraid to burn 4 bottles in an attempt to do it, but that I would need at least 4 bottles of beer and then 4 samples of residual yeast from those beers to make a kind of a bloom of that yeast to bake. But it's on our website. You guys should check it out. I encourage you. This is the time for experimentation and adult chemistry sets. Try to bake a loaf of bread with Schneider Weisse and let us know about it. Yes. put it on Instagram, but I already told Hans-Peter what I attempted to do, and he told me that was essentially dumb. So use 4 bottles. Hopefully you can drink 4 bottles or share 4 bottles with some people in your home. Yeah, or share. But let's talk about the re-fermentation in the keg. As you can see, guys, this is the keg storage facility of Schneider Weisse in Kelheim, and these kegs are stored upside down. And they are shipped on a container upside down. They go to our wholesalers upside down, and hopefully at that point the wholesalers are delivering them upside down to their retailer and then brought upright. But maybe you can talk about why you do that.
It's very important to keep it upside down up to the retailer, because the yeast settles down, of course, in the keg if you keep it for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or so. And just before pouring in the glass, it's very important. The retailer has to make it to mix it to make it homogeneous. Mm-hmm. And so you have you have always the same cloudiness when you pour the beer from the keg. If you don't do that, if we send it to the restaurant or to the retailers on the not upside down, you have a lot of yeast in the first when you start pouring from the keg.
Okay.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to say that there is a split going when you pour it. The beer is taken from the bottom of the keg.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
if you start pouring and you have all the yeast at the bottom, you just pour proper yeast at the beginning when the yeast lies at the bottom. And if you store upside down, before you use it in the account, you turn it around and the yeast starts to flow, that it's everywhere in your keg.
Yeah, so it's dispersed evenly. Yeah, and it's such an important part of not only the flavor and that full mouthfeel flavor, but the aroma as well, you know. And maybe, and Susanne, if you want to take this, but listen, one of the with the proliferation of craft beer and this, you know, bars carrying some upwards to 50, 60 beers sometimes, it's very hard for people to serve the beer in 60 different branded glasswares. And usually there is a Hefeweizen type beer glass for it. But if you can't use a Schneider Weisse glass, is there something that if you were visiting a glassware that you would accept or not accept? I mean, would you take it in a wine glass versus an American pint, or, you know, something like that?
I prefer the wine glass because it's the rim is thinner. I think the American pints, they are really thick, and so you don't have a nice flow on your tongue. For me, it's important that the top is really wide, so that you can smell it, because wheat beer has such a beautiful nose, you know, such rich flavors, aromas, that you should always be able to smell what is in the beer.
Yeah, it's always hard. You don't want to, you know, you understand the restraints the accounts have to pour it, but there is an importance in delivering that full experience. And, you know, imports are priced a little bit more than your American craft guy down the street. So I think the consumer should get the best possible experience with those beers. So I appreciate that. Hans-Peter, talking about your original Schneider Weisse, and I'll have my comment on this in a little bit, but obviously one of the biggest parts that I always associated with Schneider Weisse was your open fermenters, and I might have invented a term, off-gassing, based on an article I read or something, but maybe you can explain to us beyond, you know, the romanticism of open fermentation. Why is it preferred by Schneider Weisse? What are the advantages, and why do you continue to do it?
Yeah, it's the traditional system to have open fermentation. It has some special ideas behind, because if you see on the picture on the left side, he has a big spoon to skim it off the Kreuzen, this foam, and that means we had a lot of strange particles in this foam from the brewing process, and with this open system we can remove these these particles which are bad for the flavor. We can remove it from the top, and it helps to clean the aroma and the flavor, and to bring it to a good balance.
Because obviously you have residual hop proteins, stuff like that are in
yes.
boil, and they've already given their virtues. Now they're just sitting there, getting oxidized, getting weird flavors that could get into the beer. Obviously, is it true that there is the oxygenation of the beer itself kind of helps with those flavors?
Yeah, it's a little bit another. It's another idea to get a very light oxygenation, and so we have more at the end of the fermentation. We have more of this vinyl guaiacol in the beer, because this chemical process, needs a little bit of oxygen to run.
Interesting. So yeah, I think that's a pretty cool thing to see, and I added the demands respect for hygienic conditions, because I mean, I visited small breweries in America, some very large breweries like Guinness in Ireland, and hygiene is the common trait that runs through all, and they're all striving for. But I will say, going into an open fermentation brewery, I thought there'd be a rustic feel to it, but that is one of the most hygienic rooms I've ever seen. And obviously, as a visitor, I was very inclined to stay away. I didn't want to touch anything. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to drop my iPhone into it. And I think when you see people with brew kettles, then they start sticking their heads in, sticking their iPhones in. There is a respect for sanitation that this room demands, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really unhappy about that, because it would be great to show that room to everybody, because you can feel the beer, and you can feel it, you can smell it. It's great. It's great atmosphere, but it's impossible to
march in with 50 people.
Yeah.
And I'll speak a little bit more about my experience going into this room when we get to Aventinus, because I need to paint a picture. So we'll move forward with this, guys. If you remember one thing about Schneider Weisse, this is amazing. Is there anyone else doing this in Germany? I know Sierra Nevada does it, but there aren't a lot of breweries doing this, correct?
Open fermentation.
The Aventinus.
No, I'm saying, are there any other breweries in the world? How many are doing this? Is it very common?
Yeah, it's a classical system, but in the ancient times, many breweries did it. But now there are some small breweries. The big ones don't do that, and I think this fermentation cellar in the Schneider Weisse is the biggest one in wherever.
We'll say the world until we're proved otherwise. I think we can say bold. I'm from New York. You just say something's famous, and you just famous pizza first, best selling. That's it. Until we're proved otherwise, this is the largest one. So, Susanne, maybe because I want to come full circle with this original Schneider Weisse and the idea of the Munich connection, but this term Stammtisch, I love it. And to me, this is what makes original Schneider Weisse special, because it's a social beverage, and maybe explain a little bit what that term means.
Yeah. Well, as Peter already mentioned, that people sit together over a beer and talk in the Munich place. And Stamm means regular, and Tisch is table. So the Stammtisch is a table for regulars. And well, you can see in the picture, you can see some men sitting together. And well, it's a tradition that the same group of people meets on the same day of the week, like a Friday night, at the same table. They can't sit anywhere else. It's their table, and they have their Stammtisch sign there. I think in Munich, in our place, we have more than 100 different Stammtisch who meet either Friday night, Sunday morning. It was also a tradition in Bavaria to go to church at 10 and then spend an hour at the Stammtisch in an inn, have some beers, and then go home for lunch. So
yeah, I think there's a really awesome opportunity to use this terminology as we get back into the bars. I can't help but only think in terms of New York City because I live here, but I know especially some of these great neighborhood bars with good beer programs. If you're out there, if you're watching this webinar, I think we should have a Stammtisch original Schneider Weisse party for your regulars that get together. I know one that comes off the top of my head is Dive Bar in New York City. He has a softball team that shows up, every Thursday from Central Park. Maybe it's a little Schneider Weisse Stammtisch there. But I love that term. I know our owner and CEO, Steve Alani's on this call, and he's dying to Stammtisch in Newburyport. I think we'll have to get him a T-shirt because that's definitely, he's got a group of regulars that get together, including his brother. And I think that term sums that up perfectly. So I'm so happy to add this to our beer vernacular. It's perfect. It's everything we believe in at Global Beer, for sure. So let's talk about Aventinus. I'm jealous that you guys get to pour one. I'm so upset that I don't have one in my hands. You've poured it. So this is, for years, I didn't even know Aventinus was made by Schneider Weisse. I'll be honest with you guys. And I think you see this new label for wholesalers. You probably haven't interacted with this new label yet, but we're bringing it back. We're letting people know that Aventinus is brewed by Schneider Weisse, which I think is pretty exciting. You'll see it on the new cans over the next 4, 6, 8 months. You'll start seeing this in your wholesaler floors. But the idea, Hans-Peter, of a Weissen Doppelbock, obviously there are Doppelbocks. We mentioned Spaten Optimator and stuff like that, but a Weissen Doppelbock is something unique and something different. What makes a Weissen Doppelbock from a drinking experience different than any other Bock beer, essentially?
I think as a consumer, the first what you can feel is the carbonation, because if you have a Salvator, Optimator, or the Celebrator, it's a bottom fermented. It's a Doppelbock, a dark Doppelbock. It's very heavy, very malty, very rich in the flavor. But if you have the Weizen Doppelbock, it's dark as well, but the carbonation is high, and the flavor is very, very rich and big. Yeah. And the difference you can feel if you take a sip, you drink it. You have a lot of bubbles in your mouth, and it's very dangerous because you cannot feel the alcohol.
Yeah,
it has 8.2% ABV. It's a lot for a beer, but you cannot feel it, and that's the secret of the Weizen Doppelbock.
Yeah, I think for me, this is the most exciting part of this webinar. Was okay. You talked about that you're using one yeast strain for primary fermentation and bottle fermentation across all beers. You've been able to create original Schneider Weisse and Aventinus, which are two completely different drinking experiences within the realm of Weiss beer. And it speaks to the caliber of Schneider Weisse, and that, other people be like, oh God, that's stodgy. They're only brewing one type of beer. I think that's even more impressive that when you're restrained in what you can work with, to be able to express two very different beers that's mastery. So this beer for me is the apex of what you guys do. It's, we like a little bit of strength in our beer, no doubt, but it's also got some complexity and a silky mouthfeel and all that good stuff. But from a brewing process, is there a more difficulty brewing this beer for you? Is it higher temperatures that you're dealing with because it's higher ABV? How do you keep that clean flavor at that high alcohol?
Yeah, it's a different recipe. There's a different malts It's a little bit more dark barley malt, but the same part of wheat malt, and different hops, of course, very low in the hop content, and but the same yeast, and and a lot of malt and less water. So we have a lot of Plato, 18.5. So the fermentation works completely different, because if the yeast has a lot of sugar to ferment, it has a completely different way of fermentation, and so we get more flavor, the beer is more rich, and it's completely different. You have to talk about
it's beautiful. And to bring it back, and Susanne, I'll let you take this, because this is you blew my mind with this information. The fact that and Alessandro Bonin, who actually works for Chimay in Italy, asked this question because he's on right now. But could you explain the Aventinus Fest? Let's get people's mind around this crazy night that happens at the brewery at only drinking an 8.2% Weissen Doppelbock. I'll share the picture, and you obviously you touched on Johannes Aventinus and the naming of the beer, so we can skip that slide. Let's get right to the fun. People drinking steins of Aventinus.
Yeah. So this is basically the only beverage you can get that night. It's a liter, a mass, and not a half liter. It's a mass of Aventinus. You can choose Aventinus, or you drink a liter of water, but the other people would look at you. So the strong beer season is in Lent time, and that's when people don't eat and they rather drink, and the breweries have their opening festivals for the strong beer, and so we have the Aventinus Fest in the middle of March. In the picture on the left, you can see people having fun, and on the right, you can see Georg Schneider in his lederhosen with Mr. Aventinus with a 3-liter glass opening the festival. We have 500 people in a beer hall right at the brewery. We have Oktoberfest music playing. The party starts at 8. It finishes at midnight, and people have at least 3 liters of Aventinus. Some of them drink 5 mugs. Everybody's having fun. People are dancing on the benches. So it's a crazy night. And as you mentioned, Dan, it's really dangerous, because when you're thirsty, you just drink this beer, and then at midnight you leave the hall and you go into the fresh air, and the whole world turns around.
Yeah, therein lies the benefit of being located in a small village, because then you can kind of, for lack of a better term, stumble home. But you say some people even go down to the little pub downstairs as well. Some of the people related more to the brewery, and keep it going beyond 12 o'clock too. So I would love to be a part of that, but I think you would need to set up a tent in a sleeping bag for me out in the beer garden if I ever went to Aventinus Fest. I think it's really cool that this thing kicks off with Johannes Aventinus bringing up the 3-liter, Georg Schneider tasting it and saying, it's good. The Aventinus is good. Let's get started. That's just a cool thing. I'm eager to get back to selling in the United States, so we can share this story with bars and even if it's just a slice of that experience to their customers. I think that is so cool. We think about Oktoberfest all the time, and we'll even talk with Stiegel next week, but there's a May component to these beers that I think is a spring component to this beer culture. Oktoberfest seems to just be what everyone associates, but the spring harvest in Germany, to me, sounds like a little bit more peaceful yet debaucherous. So that's exciting. Yeah. Maybe Hans-Peter, you can explain quickly, because you're seeing here, everybody, the new labels of Aventinus that are slowly rolling into the market, obviously with the shutdown of on-premise and the slowing down of the supply chain a little bit. We're not getting to this package as fast as we would like, but it will come into the market. There have been some questions in the marketplace about, I'd rather have my Aventinus in bottle because it's second fermented in the bottle and it's going to be different in the can. But maybe you can speak about the quality of the liquid in both packages.
The process in the can is the same as in the bottle. It's for us it's completely new. We did it last year, first time, and it was for us interesting as well to do that in the can. We are very strict in this idea for the bottle or can conditioning system or keg conditioning system. It's all three things: bottles, cans, and kegs came from the same batch, and we have to be a little bit careful with the carbonation because the cans are not so strong as the glass bottles, but that works as well, very nice, and we are happy with the can, and I love it.
So people should be as confident in the liquid in both packages, which is important to note. Obviously, the can brings an opportunity for the off-premise retailer to get a little bit more recognition on the shelf as well. But I think the most important part of this slide is that Schneider Weisse is taking a little bit of a stronger credit for the Aventinus, which I think is important because, again, going back to the original purpose of this webinar, you're brewing two fantastic beers in a great range. We do have some questions. I just want to let everyone know that I see them, and all of them are fantastic, and we will get to them. So we'll forge ahead, so we can get to your questions as fast as possible. I just wanted to make one note. This is a picture from my iPhone, so I apologize for the lack of quality here, Hans-Peter, of your brew house. But I just want to let you guys know, walking into the open fermentation of Aventinus, for me, I've gotten to go to breweries all over the world. I'm a spoiled man, but walking into this brew house is like, with Aventinus Brewing, is like 1,000 banana breads being baked at the same time. It is the most amazing smell, and it's cold. So like, if you think about going out on a cold winter's day and someone's lighting a fire a mile down the road, you can smell it. It's just in cold air, you smell things at a higher level. So imagine all that banana bread in a refrigerator. It is insane. So when we speak about this beer, we speak about open fermentation, the experience, the quality. There's no off flavor when you walk into a fermentation room of Aventinus. It is a mind-blowingly different experience that is delicious. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. So we'll talk about Aventinus Eisbock, and maybe you can speak of the history of this beer. Obviously, it's your strongest of your range, but it's strongly related. It relies on the brewing of Aventinus. We won't stay on it long, but you can explain the story of why it exists and how you make it.
Yeah, the story about the Eisbock is that in the ancient times, in the winter months, they transport the Aventinus over the country, and it was very cold, and sometimes the bottles freeze it, and when the people tasted the frozen Aventinus sometimes, and they found out that it's a really interesting liquid, a really aromatic, really flavorful liquid, and we remember the story, and we tried to make the same, to realize this old idea with a new fashioned equipment, and with a modern fashioned equipment. And it was 20 years ago. It was about 2000, the first time, and after some experiments, we found a really good process to brew this special beer in a very consistent quality, because that's a big challenge to have the consistent quality, and always over the year, always the same, and not only in the winter time or so.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, and the special aroma from this Eisbock comes, of course, from the Aventinus. It's a concentrate. It's an extract, the concentrate of this of the aromas from the Aventinus. And so you can find this clove and this figs and all these special flavors in a very high quantity.
Yeah, it's special, and we're gonna speak a little bit to the Langkeller and what you guys have done beyond the concentration of the process of 10 to 14 days of controlled freezing that makes Eisbock. Obviously, we talk about the Aventinus Langkeller, and Susanne, I'm using your picture again from my iPhone, but here's a picture of this your cellar essentially, where you're laying down Eisbock to age, and you gave me the opportunity to select a few bottles to taste with Hans Peter, which is an unbelievable experience. There's Susanne letting me in through the gates of the cavernous Langkeller, but maybe you can explain how this came to be and what's up with that space in general, where you got it from.
Yeah, this is basically, it's like a cave. You walk in and you go right into the mountain. So you have the same low temperature in there basically all year. And this cave was used by the brewery to store ice that when there was no refrigeration, to store ice, or as they needed more ice, which they made during winter time for the warmer months. And so at some point we had the idea to store our higher alcohol beers there, just to find out how they age and what they're like. And yeah, I took you there. We ate some Aventinus, and we also found some cases of Eisbock. We took them out and we tried it.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. Again, unbelievable space, and the ceilings are so high and the temperature was so cool, but there's all these different rooms. I mean, you guys could age half of the production of Brunello de Maltacino in that room. There's catacombs upon catacombs of that space. It's really amazing. But we tasted 2016 and 2017 Eisbock. Unfortunately, to our wholesalers and consumers out there, we're not going to be doing our full-fledged holiday brochure at Global Beer Network. But obviously, with us, Eisbock is more of a seasonal package, so we still want to deliver this beer to you. So you'll see information for pre-order and pre-sale. Obviously, the off-premise is still rolling, but even on-premise doing bottle features. By the time we get it here, I hope all this blows over, but it's a really cool opportunity. So as you inquire about it, let us know if you're interested. And there's only 145 cases available. But Hans Peter, maybe we can talk about, we tasted the 2017, we tasted the 2016, and to me, it was two very different experiences. One was delicate, one was strong, boozy. So you mentioned vintages and how the brewing year really does play a part in malt quality. So you can talk to that.
Yeah, it's very close to the wine industry, because if you have different vintages, you have different aromas, different flavors, and we found the same result in when we aged the Eisbock. That was very interesting for us as well, of course.
Yeah, really neat. Again, you're just getting that next level of concentration. We're excited about this. God, it can't come soon enough, to be honest with you. So, Susanne, we will be in touch about when we start getting this on board. This is really our first time talking about it to our customers. So hopefully the floodgates open a little bit and those 145 cases flow out. Just a quick note, the line that's available in the US right now with Global Beer Network is seen before you. This is a good moment to ask a question from Ron Watt. Because he's talking about his the range, and Hopfenweiss is available. So in select markets, San Francisco being one of them. So he asked, the Hopfenweiss is Weissen Doppelbock also. Please explain the difference with Schneider Weisse, Hopfenweiss, and Aventinus. Thanks.
Schneider Weisse, Hopfenweiss is it's it's a dry hopped Weizenbock. I say always it's American style because it's very, very strong, very rich, very full bodied. It has a lot of hops, and the flavor is very fruity from Hallertau Saphir hops. It's a special hop variety grown in the Hallertau, and it's the first Hopfenweiss we brewed was a collaboration brew with Garrett Oliver in 2007 here in Kelheim, and a second step in Brooklyn. Yeah.
So this beer is available on tap at Red House in San Francisco. I think it's important to note that. As far as GBN's philosophy on this beer, we really wanted to pull back and make sure that it's going to people that obviously can ensure the quality, ensure the freshness. If you're going to make a hop forward beer, it should be peak freshness and be flowing regularly. So thank you to Rad House in San Francisco to be able to keep this beer flowing, because your efforts keep it flowing for other people in the United States as well. But we'll continue to scale up with that brand over time, but we wanted to do a little bit of a reset on that brand so that we can make sure we have the best quality going out in the market. Good opportunity, because some people might be seeing the Helleweisse in that product line going, what is Helleweisse? I've never seen this. Our intention is coming soon. Our goal was this summer. We're ready to ship. Obviously, again, timelines have changed for everybody. Susanne or Hans-Peter, if you want to talk about this, whoever wants to field it, but some people might say, oh, what's the difference between original and Helleweisse? How different can it be? But having consumed both those beers, it is a totally different experience, and Helleweisse is certainly tailored for summer and outdoor drinking. So whoever wants to talk about the differences, go for it.
Yeah, the first what the consumer can see is the color. Of course, it has a pale amber color, and it's a little bit less in the ABV. That means it's more you can more drink, of course, because it has 4.9 ABV compared to the 5.4 in the original. It has a little bit lower carbonation, 6 grams instead of 7 grams, and the aroma profile is a little bit different. We tried to bring a little bit more fruitiness, a little bit more freshness into the beer. It's not so heavy as the original, and we served it. We poured it from the can. You can see.
You can lower your screen a little bit there. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, the colors are different. That's original. That's a Helleweisse.
Yeah. So you're gonna it's in the note that I get more on the Helleweisse is citrus. The citrus notes versus the typical banana clove. It's there. Obviously, you're not going to remove that flavor. You're using the same yeast, but the prevailing notes are citrusy and summery and bright, comparably to the.
Yeah. I feel it very refreshing. It's very, very nice for the summertime if it's cold, and it's really, really it's a shot of refreshing.
And honestly, I've never really spoke too much, just with the range of beers that we've carried over the years at Global Beer Network. I never really spoke to grams of carb per liter before, and you wouldn't think the difference between 0.6 and 0.7 is substantial, but I challenge anybody to drink a full glass of original and a full glass of Helleweisse. You will. It is a noticeable difference in filling quality to the beer. I mean, that 0.6 versus 0.7, it's substantial.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The Helleweisse is more like a sessionable wheat beer. You can drink more, and the original is more complex beer.
And Susanne, if I recall correctly, when you spoke to Hans-Peter about this, and he's a humble guy, he doesn't he doesn't brag by any means about the things he's accomplished with the brewery. But you had mentioned that when you gave him the original idea, because it was kind of the sales organization that said, hey, we need something a little bit more sessionable to bring to the market, and you thought you were going to receive test batches and stuff like that. But Hans Peter's like, I know what you want. I got it, right? He kind of just brewed it first go.
This is always the same thing. Also, when we did the first special series, the Tap X, that's what I told you. We made a special for the Netherlands, and I told him what we needed. And I was expecting that I could try the beer, take it to the Netherlands, and we had a big event to present the beer. But yeah, we had it for the event, but we didn't do any test batch. And with this, basically, it for us it was the same. Hans Peter knew, we were sure as a sales staff, we were sure he knows what he's doing, and yeah, this is what we had in mind and what we got.
Awesome. It's great. It's a great beer. It can't get to the United States quick enough for me. Again, it's exciting. I know we all want to get to the beach. We want to get to the park. We want to get to the golf course, and this fits conveniently in a golf bag for me. So we're excited for that. To have a Hefeweiss that is light in the Hefeweiss that is also in a can, that is also re-fermented. This is not a mass market Hefeweizen. It is obviously going to compete with bigger Hefeweizen brands, but those Hefeweizen brands aren't canning in some cases, and they're definitely not re-fermenting in the can. So you're getting a higher quality experience, and I think the market is excited to try that.
Yeah.
So we actually
it's on the water now.
On the water. Love it. So yeah, there are some wholesalers that are bringing it in. It's not the widespread rollout that we originally have expected. If anybody has questions about where this brand is going, I would reach out to your sales director, reach out to Christy Hansen, our vice president of sales, whoever is your contact at the moment, as to basically where you can get this, how you can get it, which wholesalers are bringing it in. Our intention is to get as much distribution in 2020 in this brand as we can, because for us, I think original Schneider Weisse is a benchmark in history, and it deserves to be part of every great beer program. But in the same light, Hefeweiss is something that any account can really position it as something different, unique, and of higher quality. I was able to actually get a lot of our questions in as we spoke, but there are a couple. One of them is, how can I be Aventinus at the Aventinus Fest? The person wants to dress up as Aventinus, and I don't know why he's saying that, because it's actually our Chicago sales manager, Ed Kane. I'm outing you. And although his silhouette may work for Aventinus, I don't think he has facial hair. So I don't know how that works. But is that something that could be arranged? That's no. That's no.
To bring in the glass, you mean?
No, for you to just dress. I don't even think he has to be the guy. I think he's just looking to dress up as Aventinus and walk around. So you'd have two Aventinus. It'd be like having two Santa Clauses at the mall. It would really be a confusing situation for people. But that's what we do. The other question is, what is the painting behind you on camera? An explanation of what is behind you. They don't know.
Friend, well, it's a painter, really a famous local painter who made it for Georg Schneider, and it's a Schneider Weisse. That's the universe of Schneider Weisse. You see a Schneider Weisse glass. Here you have the brewery in Kelheim, where we are. You have the monument of Kelheim, the Hall of Liberation. Then there is the hops from the Hallertau. And we have the wheat and barley fields, where we are very close to as well. Like, we source most of our ingredients locally. We have contracted farmers nearby also for barley and wheat. And well, this looks like a thunderstorm. I don't know what it's like. And here you have people harvesting wheat and barley. And this is also a monument from the area. So this is, yeah, Schneider Weisse with its ingredients in its natural surroundings.
Susanne, at first, I didn't think you were going to be able to answer that question. And I thought I put you on the spot, like, oh, what is this painting? And you just crushed it. That was impressive. That was awesome. I don't know if anybody else has questions. Oh, we have one. Have you ever used one-way kegs for export markets, like a key keg or
No,
anything like that? No, always been metal keg.
it's impossible because of the carbonation, the high carbonation. Because we have a very high pressure in the kegs, and these one-way kegs are not used for that high pressure systems.
Great. I think that's it. I don't know if anybody else has questions out there, but we'll end with a prost. I have a little beer left to even do that. Thank you guys so much for your time. We're going to do a little last minute kind of house cleaning here at the end of this webinar, but thank you for your time. Hopefully everyone out there found this super informational and a lot of great stories. And for these two to give us their time at night. What time is it there right now? 8 o'clock? 8:15?
8:15, yes.
So thank you for that long day, because I know you texted me to do a test webinar early in the morning, so I know you've been in there all day. So thank you also to your IT guy for making this all possible. Let's cheers unsung heroes in information technology out there in the world. Cheers. Last item here, guys. Next up on the brewery tour, the Global Beer Brewery Tour, is what makes Bavik a super pils with Albert Brabander, a 6th generation brewer. Unbelievable brewery that is brewing a world-class Pilsner under the same roof as one of the most comprehensive sour programs, one of the original foeder aging sour programs in the world. But really, this webinar will be specifically to making high-quality Pilsner. This is a Pilsner that has a 2-year shelf life in the bottle. We say 1-year shelf life in the keg, but there was a long time we said 2, but people just didn't believe it. So we had to say 1, and it's okay because we've grown it so much and it sells so much that that's no longer an issue. So unbelievable stability, great import product, great guy, 6th generation owner. We'll have stories. We're so excited. Another great webinar. Future ones. This one was just added. 5/7 at 10 a.m. Stiegl MyFest pregame. The Stiegl Brewery is going to be recording their Maypole Festival and bringing up the Maypole live on Facebook. So the hour before that happens, we'll meet with their export manager, Thomas Necker, to discuss what Mayfest is all about and the history of Goldbrow and Stiegl Radlers. 5:14, Father of Dragons. With Van Steenberg Sampler with Jeff. A lot of you may know him. He's one of the most enigmatic people in the Belgian beer world. So he's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a lot of sampling of high ABV beers. So get ready for that. How does Boone select vats for the Discovery Box? We're going to get to blending, Oud Goose, Mariage Parfait, their whole foeder program, which is going to be awesome. And then lastly, Brasserie de Silly and another webinar from Beers to Chimay in their dairy production alongside beer and cheese pairing. So all of this is to come. You can check it out on the Global Beer Network website, right on the banner, learn more, but we're constantly promoting, letting people know through our social media. If you're a retailer, consumer, please follow and stay abreast of what is coming down the line. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Susanne and Hans-Peter. Go home, get rest, stay healthy, stay sanitized. Thank you so much for your time. Cheers, guys.